Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Talentstorm Talks. So my name is Rachel Arts, and this is a conversation with Lilly Rosier of Shimano Europe. And we're going to be talking about communities of practice today, and in particular, the business analyst community of practice that Lilly has set up at Shimano. So just to introduce myself briefly, my name's Rachel Arts. I'm the founder of Talentstorm. I live in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, from the UK originally, and I support businesses with their people development in lots and lots of different ways, from training, from development, from consultancy. And I'm always happy to learn about different ways that we can learn as individuals and within our organizations. So that's why I'm really, really excited for this conversation today. And just to say how I met Lilly before she introduces herself, we actually met through a kind of learning intervention. And we found we had a lot in common. And that was the fact that we'd both moved to a different country. Lily's done that more times than me. And we connected over our passion for continual learning and development, which has been really, really great. And I've enjoyed having many conversations with Lilly on this topic. So I'm really excited for this conversation today. So Lilly, would you like to tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I'm a business analyst. I have worked for Shimano here in Eindhoven for just over 4 years now. And for anyone who doesn't know Shimano is a worldwide manufacturer and supplier of high quality advanced bicycle components and fishing tackle. I'm part of the European Sales and Marketing organization, and we have 14 sales offices here in Europe, and also a strong network of distributors and OEMs that we work with. So a very large geographically distributed organization, very international as well, which is actually quite fantastic, and I fit in quite well because I was born in Bosnia, and then I lived in Croatia. Then I moved to the UK, and now I'm based here in Eindhoven, also in the Netherlands, which is where our Shimano headquarters are.
Hey, thank you, Lilly. I was just thinking as well, I'm not sure I've set the view up properly, so I'm just gonna, hopefully we'll be side by side on the screen now. So yeah, thanks for that introduction. And I think just to say as well that we both had the benefit of working for Shimano, and I did a little spell supporting Shimano. So that's kind of how I got to see a bit of the community of practice that you set up there, which I was really, really intrigued about. So before we delve into your experience of setting that up, I'm just going to give a bit of background on what is a community of practice, because for those outside the learning profession, that name is quite jargonistic, and it sounds maybe a bit more fancy than what it can be. So a community of practice is really just a way to foster social learning, so that the kind of informal ways of learning that can happen. And it might come about from, within an organization where you've got specialists that experts in their functional area, but they might not be working together side by side in the same department. They might be dispersed throughout the organization. So it's a way of allowing those experts with that common background to learn and to keep that social learning together. And generally, you need 3 elements for a community of practice. So that's obviously a common goal. You need a commitment and a way of working together, whether that's online or offline. And you need that commitment. So a common goal, a commitment, and a way of working together. So I think actually my view on communities of practice is a lot of them exist out there, but they're not called a community of practice. So they might just be called a learning network, or they might be called the such and such group, like, the tech club or something like that. So you might find that you've already been involved in something that's similar to a community of practice, but by a different name. But the power of them really comes about by allowing development for those professionals in an informal way, but their outcomes can be very significant working alongside the organisation and the strategy and the strategic goals for that particular discipline, or supporting company-wide challenges. So when I spent some time working with Shimano and was working alongside Lilly, who I already knew and heard about her community of practice, I was really, really intrigued to know what she'd done and how. So over to you, Lilly. So if we can set the scene, what was your experience and understanding of communities of practice prior to Shimano?
So to be honest, prior to Shimano, I had absolutely zero experience of working within a community of practice. I've not even heard of the term myself. And as you explained in the introduction, it may sound like quite a complex term to say, well, what is a community of practice? What is a practice? Because yes, I have worked as a business analyst for very many years prior to joining Shimano, but again, you work on your own or alongside other business analysts within the same organization. The way we met, I think we were talking about the topic about self-directed learning, and I very much practice self-directed learning. And when I joined Shimano, I was looking at how business analysis work was being done at Shimano, and we were at the time outsourcing quite a lot of the work. Some work was being done internally. I was relatively new to the organization, and also at the time it was just the beginning of Corona, so we were all in lockdown. I was trying to navigate my way around and try to meet people and understand who's who and who does what and how can I do my job as a business analyst. And around that time, I came across a book from British Computing Society, which I'm a member of. So often when I need help or I need to brainstorm, I consult my bookshelf, which is usually BCS. And there was a book published back in 2019, so at the time relatively new book, about delivering business analysis as a service. And among other things, they also talked about the concept of community of practice. So thinking about it, I knew for Shimano, where we were at the time, a service concept wasn't, we weren't quite ready for that. But I was thinking, well, maybe trying to create a community would be a way forward. So I did some more research on that topic. I read some other books. There are some quite good books on the topic of setting up formally a community of practice and running it and appointing a community manager and so on and so forth. But in essence, I created a very light outline business case, and I shared it with some of my colleagues who are like-minded and who were doing similar things, not necessarily under a title of business analysis. And I think in our profession, this is one of those things where business analysis is always performed within an organization, but people who perform it may not necessarily have a title of being a business analyst. So I was trying to think, well, okay, if we were to create an informal network of a sort where we can connect and share knowledge, maybe that would help me, but also help other people who are in the same situation as I am. And it kind of organically grew from that. I shared the idea, and it was actually quite easy to sell. I think I had hit a nerve to say, well, okay, other people have similar needs, and then we could connect. So I didn't necessarily go down the formal route of saying, okay, we're going to formally set up. I wasn't trying to sell the setup of a community to say, okay, we need to hire a manager, we need to have a formal sponsorship. Yes, I have some sponsors, and again, there was an engagement and the buy-in within the organization, but it was more to say, let's just try something voluntarily and allocate some time to getting together and exchanging ideas and talking about how we do business analysis and where we're engaged in different projects across the organization. So that was really our starting point. It really grew from a simple idea to say, well, can we connect, bring people together, and let's just see where that takes us.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. And I love that, your example of you just reading to keep your professional skills up to date, coming across the idea, seeing that there might be a need. There's just one thing I want to pick up on there, because you mentioned that when you joined Shimano or shortly after, it was lockdown and everyone was working remotely. And I can relate to that, because that was, well, when I was supporting them, it was just after lockdown, but there was still remote work. And that feeling of joining an organization and you're just sat in your room at home and you can't reach the people you might need to reach, and you don't know who they are. And so I'm just wondering how much that remoteness played a part into feeling the need of wanting to connect people together some way.
I think that's, again, a little to do with the mindset and changing the mindset and acquiring the one that we've not necessarily had or needed to have prior to experiencing the full lockdown, because previously we'd rely on meeting people at the tea room and exactly having a coffee in the corridor, having these ad hoc meetings, and we could no longer do that. So now it was more about creating that space online where we could have this remote, as I call them, still tea coffee meetings, where we can connect and chat to each other. But trying to do that one-on-one it's quite inefficient, because you're having a conversation with one person, but then you're thinking, okay, but this might be interesting to another person. And but then also in our situation, where we have sales offices across different countries, we're in a situation where this wasn't exclusive to lockdown, because it is something that I thought, well, this would for us work continuously, because we're not able to just meet each other in person as and when. We would have to be conscious that we need to create those meetings and spaces where we can connect and collaborate online.
Thank you. So it amplified, I think it amplified a need, but you're saying the need was already there. So if I was to say, why was a community of practice the right solution for the business analyst community at Shimano, it's what you just said. It's large organization, distributed workforce across different countries. What other reasons were there?
So the reasons are in that, I think, by the nature of the work as a business analyst, you usually get assigned to a project, and then that is the view that you have of the organization and the work that you're doing within that particular project. But then when there are multiple projects being run across the organization, I was coming across some business analysis work where I was thinking, well, actually, someone has already done that. So we're in essence duplicating to some extent the work, because it's not all being brought together. And because I was new to the organization, I didn't really know everyone that I could go to and ask about these things. So I think that was another key thing, that I think by working together, we can get to know who's who, and we can get to know who works on which particular project, so that we avoid trying to duplicate work. We can just reuse what is already there and build upon that. And then we get more work done faster, and the quality will improve.
Yeah, absolutely. So a way of sharing experience, learning, process, all of those.
Exactly. And there is so much more that can be shared if we have people communicating in person rather than passing over the documentation, because no matter how good your documentation is, I think you can't always write everything down, because some things are just known and it's just, I think, how people's minds work. It's a lot easier to share that knowledge of how things are done when people are communicating together about how they approach things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when you started, because you said you had this approach that was like a soft approach to setting one up, because it's not like hiring someone. You're not asking for hard budget or anything like that. You're just saying, can we set up a voluntary community? But I know you still took that setup quite seriously, and you had like a PowerPoint with a business case. So what kinds of things went into that initial document to get that buy-in?
Of course, to introduce any new idea, I think you need to create the reason. You need to explain what it is that you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it in the first place. So I put together just one single visual to say, okay, this will be the framework, and this is how we're going to contribute towards our strategic objectives, and this is what the idea behind the community is. And also, initially I worked with our strategy analyst, and he helped me put together that first group of people that we thought, well, we can share this idea with them and see how it resonates. And it went from there. We then decided, okay, we can, just the two of us, we can start acting as the key subject experts, as well as being the drivers of the community, and then see what engagement and what response we get, and things kind of grew from that point onwards, because then more people joined and more people got engaged, and then they took turn in sharing their business expertise.
Yeah, and there was one slide I was just looking through today at the PowerPoint that you used, because you were kind enough to share that with me. And because you drew on, maybe it was from the book that you had from the BCS on business analysts, but you drew on like a maturity model for your profession. So I thought that was really great. But you were just saying, well, actually, if we were really evolved, we'd be doing this. So you were showing, where you are and where you need to get to, where you could get to.
And I think that's quite transferable to any profession that you work in, because whatever you do, there is that maturity level. You could be at the start of doing something, or you could be doing something in a little bit more reusable fashion, and then you could be improving things, and then you can reach the very, very advanced level. So I think that is quite transferable, and it's important to assess your current situation to know, well, where are you at, and will this contribute to any advancement? And I think within any organization, you're trying to continuously improve the way you do things. Or certainly when I think about my work, I think, well, I can continuously improve. So if I look at the work that I had done 10 years ago, I think, okay, that wasn't as great as perhaps the work that I would deliver if I were doing the same job today. So I think that applies to everything that you do. And then if you add more people to it, and if you have a group that you can access where you can even soundboard your ideas, I think that's so important and so valuable, because sometimes it's not that you really realize your line of the line of thinking until you've actually shared it with someone. So I don't know if that comes across clearly, but sometimes I think about things, and it's not until I explain my thinking to someone else that I don't necessarily need them to come back even with an idea, but I need to voice out my thinking in order to hear myself and to improve upon that. But of course, if you have someone who can then also review and edit and add, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. I mean,
it just grows, and I think then you come up with something a lot better than you could come up with if you're just on your own. And a lot of the time, as I say, if you're a business analyst working on the project, you're usually a single business analyst working on the project, so you don't have access to other business analysts. They don't. Certainly in my experience, it's not been that I don't work in a team of business analysts, so I feel like I'm on my own. And then there are the business analysts that will work in other teams, and they'll feel like they're on their own. So, and I think talking to other people who are not perhaps thinking in the same way, it's different to talking to people who are sort of inclined to think in a similar way that you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that's
or other people may not be as interested to discuss in more detail the techniques of how you do something, whereas we will get passionate and excited about discussing the details of how we document a business process, for instance, whereas for someone else it's a case of just give me the documented business process and
be done with it. Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's perfect. And what you're describing there is that social learning, and you can't force that. It doesn't mean, if you can't force it. It has to happen naturally, doesn't it? But having a vehicle for it to occur is what the community of practice is all about.
Indeed, so, and it takes time to build that as well, and to build that environment where people feel comfortable and confident sharing the work that they're doing, because again, that's not quite easy. And I don't know how it is in other professions, but I'd say for any analyst, we're continuously analyzing and over-analyzing and going through a lot of self-doubt about how good or not our analysis is. So it's just a continuous thing, and then to actually share that and to share your thinking behind it. So it's not really the deliverable itself that you deliver to the business. It's all about your approach and everything else associated with coming up with the work. So that's not as easy to ask people to come and share with a bigger group. So you have to create that safe environment where people feel that they can share their vulnerabilities.
Definitely. And it's funny you should say that, because I was thinking about that this morning, actually. So firstly, to say you need those relationships of trust before people are willing to share. So, whenever you set up a group like this, it's going to take time, isn't it, before people feel really, really safe. But the second point, and the one that just I was reminded of this morning when I was listening to a podcast, is all about growth mindset, isn't it? Because sometimes if we're in, a group with other people, depending on how well we know those people and how safe we feel, do we want to admit that we don't know something, or we're unsure about something, or asking for their help because there might be a better way? That means maybe it might feel like we're showing vulnerability, and sometimes people don't want to do that. So it's understanding the power of the growth mindset in groups. But you have to say to everyone, hey, I'm here to learn. My mind's open. I'm happy for feedback. I'm happy to talk about my work, and maybe have some constructive suggestions and dialogue. But you have to be in a very safe place to do that. So there's something about growth mindset, but specifically in what that looks like in a group environment. And that's really where the community of practice comes into its own, because you can set up meetings, you can set up events, but actually getting people to engage and be vulnerable, you can't just, that doesn't happen automatically. There's a few magic ingredients to get to that point. So maybe you can share, since you set it up, how it's been going, and some of your successes and wins, and maybe some of the challenges as well.
I think what you had just said about the growth mindset and creating that space where people can trust each other, it is very important, because it is quite difficult. And I think in today's workplace, where people don't stay within the same organization for a very long time. Okay, I still think there is a trend where some people in any organization stay for a long time, but at the same time, there are more people who change. So there is a constant rotation. And then when you look at organizations that are international, you have people from completely different cultures. So you may be doing the same kind of work in a different country. You may have come to it through different routes. you might have had formal training, or you may not have had the formal training, but you may still have the experience. So trying to understand each other, and the level of understanding, it does take time before people can trust each other, and before people can say, okay, well, let's look at the same problem together, and let's discuss it and say, well, how would you approach it, to as opposed to how someone else would approach it, to understand that ultimately it will grow into something bigger and better. So for us, I think where we had the key objective to really just bring people together and to create that environment, I think that has been successful, because we have now been running for about 3 years. And we're not that larger group, and we don't do like an online forum or anything like that. We're simply a community of people where I have a group on Teams, and usually if people want to join, it spreads through word of mouth. But there is a small group of people who regularly join our meetings, which we now hold like hybrid meetings. So if there are people in the office here at the headquarters, we join together in the room, but we also open the online meetings so that people who are based in other countries can also join. And I think for me that was really the key thing, to have that line of communication open, and I think that's going very well. But also we have started standardizing how we do our work. A few years ago, we had the business architect join our organization, and he's got 20 plus years of experience in I'd say all things enterprise architecture, so business architecture, information architecture, application IT, but also business analysis. And he's really helped us just try to get that big picture and try to focus on some key things where we as business analysts can contribute towards the organization, to say, okay, we'll put out some guides, and we'll start and work on just standardizing and improving a couple of key areas that we need to focus on, which has been really, really fantastic experience.
Okay, that's a really good summary. So you're doing monthly meetings on offline and online. And I know you sometimes have a guest speaker or something along. I know because I was one.
Do indeed, yes, indeed. Thank you. That was
so yeah, and how long? This might be a difficult question to answer, but from starting it up, how long did it take before people were opening up and sharing, would you say?
I'd say not very long, because I had initially the help from our strategy analyst, and I took the lead in just setting the scene and explaining, okay, this is what business analysis is about, and this is what we're going to focus on in terms of our conversations. And within business analysis, that covers quite a wide field, because some business analysts, they may focus on strategy, some may focus on IT projects, some may focus on data analysis, some may be doing more facilitation type activities, some may focus on change management. So we had quite a varied group. And then I didn't find it too difficult to ask people to come in and present their area of work. And then it grew from that, because it was quite important also for us to get to know each other within the group. So we then took a turn at sharing who we are, what it is that we do, how we fit within the organization, and how it's all somehow combined, and it is all business analysis at the end of the day. So we have that thread that binds us together.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that. So to get things going at the outset, you would invite different members of the group to talk about their particular specialism and so on.
Exactly.
So, classic
Exactly. And then I had guest
learning.
speakers from other areas within the business to say, well, okay, this is what they do. And then it was easier because then the whole group of people that are doing the business analysis, they can think, oh, okay, this is how we relate, say, to project management or to sales or something else. And we had a couple of other speakers, but yes, including yourself, where, as I mentioned, self-directed learning, I think, in the world of business analysis is super important.
Yeah.
Because we're often placed on projects where we don't actually know the topic or the domain. So we have to go from zero to advanced level of understanding of a topic in order to be able to help the business define the need that they have, really, and then to also be able to recommend a potential solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, so at the beginning, just to do a recap, at the beginning, you put together a business case, and I know you mentioned you worked with the business, so I know you had like a sponsor at the outset, and that's quite critical, isn't it, to just getting going at the beginning. I don't know if you want to say something about that.
Indeed, indeed. I think that sets the tone because this wasn't a formal introduction, but I think having a sponsor, and I had more than one sponsor, and there are more people interested also because they can see the value and the benefit of such a community. But I think that helps everyone because it sets the tone. It gives that message to say, well, okay, this is recognized at different levels within the organization as something important. And then it's easier to create the time for those activities.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this earlier, really, that, you know, for someone like me, when I've worked in organizations as the learning and development person, and to have people like you running communities of practice, it's like a gift, because by doing that, you're helping that group of professionals in that area to identify their own learning needs. And whether you're doing that collectively and meeting the needs, or whether you're also helping people to think about their individual needs so they then know what to go and ask for, that's really, really helpful. Because, you know, as a L&D professional, you know, we don't know every profession inside out, and you're relying on those professional areas to kind of do some of that work. So I think if I was to do like a diagram of, you know, ownership of learning needs in an organization, I mean, it used to be the classic, the individual, their line manager, and the organization as a whole, but actually you could put community of practice, their fellow professionals, their professional bodies, and so on, would be part of that diagram as well. So really important outcomes, I would say. So what challenges have you had? You've talked about the successes, you've talked about the positives and benefits, but I know putting in anything like this is never plain sailing, particularly when you're doing it voluntarily on top of your day job. So what challenges have you faced, and how have you met them?
I think finding the time is always a key challenge because everyone is always quite busy. So it's trying to cut through that to say, well, okay, there is a value, so this will help you with other things and speed other things up. If some time is invested in this particular activity longer term, and also trying to maintain that longer term vision to say, well, okay, this is contributing to something greater than perhaps what we're all individually working on right now. So whilst what we're all individually working on right now is very important and we have to do that, but then the time commitment wasn't that great with, say, monthly meetings. So it's trying to pitch that and balance to say, well, okay, what is the reasonable amount of time that we could all invest in this activity to deliver some value to ourselves and to the business. So I'm not saying it's all about the business. I think it's great that we can deliver the value to the business, but to be fair, my approach was also a little bit from a selfish perspective because I was trying to improve my life within the organization by trying to connect with other people. And then I was thinking, well, okay, if I'm improving my life, it will improve their life as well. So, but then we can also deliver some value to the organization. So that's really the angle that I've tried to take, but it's trying to maintain that long-term vision to say, yes, okay, this is valuable.
Yeah. So the piece around buy-in and people understanding that there's a bigger picture, which obviously you do at the outset, but then it needs continually reminding to keep people engaged.
Indeed. And again, we've taken that soft approach. As you say, it's possible that we could do more if we had perhaps taken a little bit more organized approach, including the HR and getting a community manager and doing more learning and development. But I think for something like that, it's I think the more complex you make it when you're not quite sure in the beginning whether this is something that would work within the organization or not, because, okay, there is research out there to say, yes, it works. And when I was starting out, also one of my colleagues shared the example from Philips, where they have started introducing communities of practice, and they have, I think, hundreds of different communities of practice running throughout their organization. But again, until you do it, you don't really know whether that is something that will work. And within my role, I wanted to continue focusing on my job of a business analyst. I wasn't looking to do work of a community manager. So then again, it's kind of putting barriers in place to say, well, okay, if we want to start something, this would be the benefit, but we'd have to create a completely new structure before we can get going. And I didn't really want to put those complications in place. I wanted to say, well, okay, maybe we can just be like a self-forming group that we can just get together and take it quite simple and easy, and it still brings value, and the risk therefore is fairly minimal in terms of, well, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah. So I think that I'm going to ask you in just a minute what tips you would give to anyone else that wants to set up a community of practice, but I'm just going to reflect for a minute on the different ways that these things can happen. So you've explained your model that you have a Teams channel, so people can message anytime, but structurally it's just one meeting once a month. But I think there's so many different ways that these things can exist, because, you know, we have all this different technology at our fingertips. And, you know, at the moment I work for myself, so I'm not within a large organization, but just the things that I personally have experienced over the last few years, that where I've connected with other communities. I mean, I've been in LinkedIn groups. They're not very good, actually. Facebook groups are a really easy way to connect. I've set up my own one for learning and development professionals. I've been in WhatsApp groups when I've been working with fellow professionals towards a common goal. So, you know, well, actually, I've been through in groups. I was in a writers accountability group, and we had, you know, yes, we did pay, so it's a little bit different. So we had like a mentor, and we had monthly sessions, and then again it was WhatsApp. So there's just so many different ways. Even Twitter, I've been in Twitter threads where there's a weekly challenge and someone, you know, managing it and giving a weekly challenge and a weekly discussion thread. So there's all these different things out there. And I know with Slack or with Teams, you know, and you can use hashtags, and, you know, you can create engagement in different ways, is kind of the point I'm trying to make. So it really, you know, it's going back to engaging with the group at the beginning, finding out what people want, what they need, you know, and how they want it to work. So allowing the group to design the process as well as, you know, the content. So yeah, so I just wanted to share that because I'm very grateful for the groups that I'm in, that I get to connect. You know, and you know, you don't have to connect with everybody in the group, but sometimes you just make a connection with one or two people, and that carries on outside of the group, which is great. So yeah, over to you, Lily. So what tips that would you give to anyone that's listened to this today, that's thought, oh, that's really interesting, maybe a community of practice would work in my organization? What tips would you give to them?
I think the key thing there is really to find someone who's equally as passionate about the topic, and then to take it from there. I think that's for me the key thing, because if I was on my own, I don't think that would really work. And also, if I look at some communities that I've since joined, a bit like yourself, some are on LinkedIn, some are on Facebook, some are on WhatsApp. There is usually more than one person coordinating things and setting things up and being there as that key person. So I think it's having someone to share um, that role of driver or the champion of the community. I think that's really the key for me. And also just to be prepared that this is something that takes time. And I think the intention is that these things take time, because they just become a new way of working. And I think it's quite a natural way of working, because I think naturally we tend to gravitate towards groups that have similar interests, whether it's to do with work, or if it isn't, whether it's similar sense of humor or any other things, we tend to naturally feel at home in those groups. So I think it's just nice knowing that there is a group like that can help a new person joining the organization and really accelerate their startup. So those are really the two key things. Find someone that you can work with, and then just be prepared that these things take time and enjoy. So it doesn't have to be complex at all. It's having a conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really great. But I love what you said there about finding someone. So you need an ally, you know, whether it's a sponsor or whether it's someone to do it with you, because otherwise it can be a bit lonely, can't it?
Exactly. You must have a partner in crime.
Yeah, and then it makes it fun, doesn't it? And then we're all more engaged and likely to do things if it's fun. But I'm just gonna
exactly, because I think if no one else shows up for the meeting, we can still
you
have
can
a
just
good
have a coffee,
meeting.
have a chat. Yeah, exactly.
And we carry on. Indeed,
Yeah.
and our working lives improve. So we
Yeah.
just bring more people in with us.
Yeah.
And also let other people take center stage, which is also something that I enjoy seeing. If other people come in and would like to take the center stage and present about the area of work that they have the expertise in, because again, none of us have expertise in everything.
Yeah. No, exactly. And you reminded me there when talking about finding an ally, about you mentioned the Philips work that they've done, and they have a model, and their 4 key ingredients from their model is an owner, so someone that owns the project, which can be more than one, is what you're saying. But then drivers, you know, what's the reason? What is there a business reason? Is there a need? And then subject matter experts, which you just mentioned as well, people to bring in to share their knowledge. And then you need the members, the other people. So
Indeed.
Yeah, so 4 layers, and then it can work top down and bottom up from the owners and from the members as well. So it's been really great talking to you today, Lily. So thank you for sharing your experience. And you know, and I wish you well with your community of practice that you've set up, that's established now. So it's in its maturity phase. Do you have any plans for the group for this new year?
We are in a process of planning. So having just returned from our Christmas holidays, we're going to be planning now in January for our activities for the forthcoming year.
Good. Excellent. Well, I think you've done an amazing job. Well done for setting it up. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to share our story. And yes, thank you also for joining one of our community sessions. And
Oh, that was no problem at all. And yeah, hopefully we'll keep in touch, and you can you know, let me know how you get on, and you know, maybe there'll be a future sharing of you know, exciting things that you do and learnings that you have.
indeed.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Rachel.